So for those of us who are tuning in or hearing this video later, I'm joined with Kristy Caylor, my good friend and a leader in the sustainability space within the apparel industry. So Kristy, thanks so much for spending some time with us on this morning. It's morning here in California and the day after a big inauguration. So thank you for making time for us.
My pleasure.
Great. Well, let's just dive in. I think we're going to have a fun time kind of talking about the things that you and I are both passionate about and a little bit about sort of the work that you're doing. I know Kristy Caylor, who is the CEO and founder of 4 Days. Kristy, I know you for a number of years now, and your background, I think, in this space is really interesting because you combine a lot of different lenses and angles from the fashion industry perspective. You cut your teeth inside of Gap Inc. and you worked to build businesses inside Gap. And then you did a very interesting career shift and launched a luxury brand, really focused on ethics and really building a sustainable and ethical supply chain for the luxury industry. That's how you and I first connected, which we'll talk a little bit about. And then in recent years, you have launched 4 Days, a company based on circular economy models for apparel. So I guess my lead-in question to you is, tell me a little bit about Kristy Caylor and this arc that you've had within your career and how you define that thread.
Yeah, I think, as you said, I've been doing this for a while. And every time I say, I've been in fashion for 15 years, I'm like, oh, how did that happen? No, I have an engineering background, which is kind of an odd match for fashion. But for me, I also did an MBA and a design program. And I really love that the industry kind of plays in supply chain and linearity and technology, but has this like magical component to it, which is product and customer and the emotional connection to the things that we buy. And so for me, I think at the very core, I've been entrepreneurial from the outset. As you mentioned, I got to launch and grow businesses for the Gap, have a tendency to question the status quo. And so when people are like, well, that's the way we do it, I'm like, but why? Shouldn't we maybe think about doing it differently? And I think that's been the theme throughout. And so in my wonderful experience at the Gap, I got to run cross-functional teams, really launch and grow some pretty exciting businesses, live in Japan for a year. And I got to spend a lot of time in our supply chain. And it was really at that point where you have that like classic experience where you like land in a major city, drive 2 hours outside of the city, come upon a fake city that's really there only to support production for like Gap and Marks and Spencer. And it's a 24-hour factory. And you're just like, whoa, we're so disconnected to the way we make products and the decisions we're making on the business side. These elements aren't being considered. And so when you have a business where you're selling a tremendous amount at markdown and having all of these returns, the cost structure is compressed and it actually has a deep impact on people on the planet. And so for me, that was just a pivotal moment where I said, I know how to make brand and I know how to make product and I think in systems, like we actually have to improve the system. And so very fortunate to kind of move on into the more mission and impact oriented space, ran Product Red for Gap, which is really the first of its kind. Like the idea that, customers could vote with their dollars or do something more important with their purchase was new. And so we really had to kind of craft a narrative around that. And for me, we initiated a sourcing strategy in Africa. It got me very interested in supply chain innovation and the impact that could have on people. And that kind of segued into Maiyet, which was that leap into luxury. But really for me, it was because fashion as a whole, particularly at that time, it's 2010. I mean, we're light years away from where we were there. But people thought like anything innovative, sustainable, just kind of doing something new was automatically going to be really ugly. And it was like, oh, that's cute. Are you a philanthropy? Like, are you going to sell in Whole Foods? And I was like, no, guys, we have to change that idea. And so that was the goal with Maiyet, which was really let's elevate what purpose and impact can quote unquote look like and do it with a really novel supply chain and work with artisans globally. And, instead of selling at Whole Foods, we sold to Neiman's and Saks and Net and all those really fabulous brands. And I thought the business would be different when I went into that landscape. I just thought, it has to be more efficient than the mass market. It has to be more thoughtful. And we couldn't possibly have so many markdowns and returns. And it kind of was the same. And I was like, wow, guys, like the whole, like I've seen it from every perspective now, the whole thing feels really broken. And it just inspired me to start asking the questions, why? Like, why do we make too many things? Why do so many textiles end up in landfill? And the answer was kind of the business model. It was really like the business model is predicated on selling all of us more and more and more and more stuff. So that's kind of what really led me to 4 days. And I was actually thinking about it. I was like, it's actually your fault, Louis, that I'm doing 4 days. Blame you.
I like that. Yeah. Tell me more.
Because I got this wonderful experience with Fashion Positive on the Cradle to Cradle initiative, and I learned about the circular economy. And it was at that moment that I was like, oh, wait, there's a new way. We don't have to do it this way.
Absolutely.
So, yeah.
Well, if I can brag on you, I mean, I was thinking in preparation for our talk about like, when did I officially really first meet you? Was it in New York in the Maiyet studio, or was it in Italy that day when we all flew in and we met with the supplier? And but from there, it was just like the fast friendship that built and built. And, you know, as I was looking over, like, we've intersected in so many committees from Ellen MacArthur Foundation. You mentioned Fashion Positive, Ellen MacArthur Foundation being focused on building the circular economy. I mean, you and I have a lot of the same influences and could just spend so much time kind of talking through how we see all this. But one of the things about you, if I can brag on you for a minute, is you're so inquisitive and you're so open. And from that first day when we were meeting with the supplier in Italy and talking through bringing the cradle to cradle methodology and thinking about chemistry and circularity and retooling in an industry that has a lot of pride, and particularly in luxury in Italy, on, but wait, we've been doing this. Like, what do you mean there's things to change? There's nothing to change. Like, we're very, you know, there's a lot of confidence and there's a lot of, and I just loved the way you built that openness into that whole project. And I saw you kind of then take that inquisitive openness over to another endeavor with 4 days too. So tell us about 4 days. Okay, it's my fault. That's great. I'll accept that. Tell me about it.
Well, and I think it was actually supplemented by another squad we were on together when we were doing the Global Future Council on Consumerism. And as I just became more familiar with the statistics around kind of landfill waste, energy consumption, water consumption in the fashion industry, and really, really honed in on the fact that we have a linear business model that's predicated on selling us more and more stuff. Different people brand it different ways. I always simplify by saying it's produce, purchase, pollute. And that's the customer experience. It's like, make us stuff, sell us stuff, and then we throw it out. And I was like, well, that can't go on for forever. So we have to actually create something more circular. And I think that specifically when we were doing the World Economic Forum kind of work, what I realized is all these huge multinational companies were like, yeah, sustainability has to be central to strategy. It can no longer be a cost center. And then no one had solutions. And everybody's like, now what do we do? And, you know, I looked at our own industry, and I thought also coupled with the fact that customers' relationship to ownership has actually changed very dramatically in the last 5 years. We no longer need to own things for forever. Yeah. It's so key, right? Because it's like, and in some cases, actually owning it for forever is a giant burden. And, you know, you see it obviously in like digitized products, like highly durable goods we can share and rent and do whatever. But in fashion, you know, you have a small sliver that's rentable, slightly larger sliver that's resellable, but then this giant swath of product that really doesn't have a solution. It's a $1.5 trillion industry. I was like, well, what are we gonna do about that stuff? And I think a lot of people are working on supply chain side and materials innovation, but really the mechanism to get it back and to relate, give customers a way to relate to their products differently. Like I had my own experience where I was moving from Manhattan to Brooklyn and I purged everything, and being a very mindful consumer, I sold to the Real and Buffalo Exchange and had like my tiny pile of like actually viable donations. And I was still left with this giant pile of crap. And it was pit stained t-shirts and single socks and stretched out pajamas. Like, why do I own this stuff? There's no residual value. It piles up in my house. And what are we going to do with it? And so that was really kind of the defining moment where I was like, you know, if we could create a system that was regenerative, that truly engaged customers in a different behavior, or one around circularity, but one that made it easy, incentivized the right behavior, built around a supply chain that could reabsorb and designed for kind of circularity, it'd be really an exciting move in the right direction. So it didn't exist.
Yeah.
So I set out to build it.
Yeah. And I think there's two thoughts that I have. One is, and by the way, I'm wearing my For Days shirt. So just for those listening, it's a subscription model. Like the apparel that you're talking about, it's almost like commodity apparel, right? It's like socks, t-shirts, underwear, you know, there are things that just where you're not going to resell it, but it has value because it's materials that need to be recollected and stay at a landfill. and there's no system in place that's at a large scale to really kind of create that material flow for that which I might not put a whole personal story on it. Now this I do because it's 4 days, so I have a personal story related to it.
Yeah.
But a lot of basic V-neck t-shirts or whatever that I have, they're just, and when they get older, stretched out, or they get a little yellow or whatever, it's like, what do you do with them now? And because those of us that are so rooted in sustainability, like hold on to things way too long, we can also feel like, don't feel guilty, put it back in the envelope, give it back to for days, and they're going to make sure these fibers end up back into another product, right?
Yeah, that's exactly right. I think what's interesting too about the model we've built, which we've really kind of encapsulated in this idea of the swap. So swap out your old clothes for new clothes. We've given a financial incentive to do that. So it's actually not a subscription in the sense that you have to subscribe to a payment. The customer's customers in the driver's seat. But that was a really critical learning, because when we launched, we actually thought we were going to be a subscription. And we said, oh, isn't that what everybody wants? And what we found is customers came back to us and said, no, we don't want that, because subscription inspires me to overuse the system. And you are the most zero waste sustainable company we've ever come across. That's a violation of values. And I was like, well, deal breaker. Then we have to do something different. What should we do? And we really sat and listened to customers and did a lot of focus groups and used the existing customers we had to design this swap system, whereby all of your items that you ever purchase through us come with a future credit. And you know that from the outset. So essentially, we've been able to turn your entire closet that you buy through us today, but eventually your entire closet into currency in the future. And that is very powerful as an incentive. So then as soon as it wears out, we've made a very easy mechanism for you to swap it out when you go to purchase something new. And so it's that ease and that accessibility that was really important.
Yeah, it's what, we talk a lot about sort of what percentage of the materials actually end up on retail shelf, how much of that actually ends up in a closet, and then how much is actually worn. And it's this similar sort of 30% gets lost along the value chain at every step. And the same as food and agriculture, and the food movement, we talk about similar numbers around, what makes it off the farm, what makes it into the shipping, the shelf, and the closet. And most of us are only wearing, this narrow margin of the closet we can see, or what's in the front of the drawer, right? And so what you're also kind of leaning into is this ability to also kind of have more of an inventory relationship, right? And then I think there are other systems out there that are looking at how do you connect citizens, not consumers, but citizens to this larger sort of conversation of what's out there, right?
I think that's right. I think the other piece of it that's kind of interesting about like durability and use, because we have this almost like insurance policy built into everything that you purchase through us, because you can swap it out for value. People really live in their clothes. Like when you talk about that use kind of statistic, what we find is the stuff that comes back to us is pretty worn. Like we do a measure on it and say, okay, like we don't have a super precise measure, but we do have data on when it goes out and when it comes back. And that's really interesting, right? So like we start to get and can create a picture of the life cycle of a closet, but we also judge it when it comes back. We're like, did this person wear it a lot? Could we resell it? Like we have this like rating system, and most of it couldn't be resold. It's like very worn. So
Kristy, are you building an apparel brand, or are you building a data company?
We're actually building a tech company.
I laugh because we've had these conversations about how important this data is, right?
Yeah, the data, the whole technology application is critical. Like how we get the customer to engage in this behavior and think about their closet and their clothing differently. We had to build a brand because this truly didn't exist. And I was talking to somebody yesterday, and they're like, "You've basically built 5 businesses in one." I'm like, "I know, I'm tired." No, I'm kidding. But it's a lot of components to get this to work in unison, and so I just felt like it was going to take a very long time for the industry to do it if I relied on all the other players. And so we said, it's about great product, making product with integrity, understanding and having it be traceable, sustainable materials and supply chain, but really building this mechanism from a technology perspective to enable the customer to do this, and then to collect the information to inform what we do next. So that beginning and end of life data point is very unique to our system, which is exciting as you think about scale. I've always built this through the lens of like, how do we scale circular economy behavior? And that's why we did it with t-shirts. It's an accessible, affordable product. It applies to a lot of people's lives. It's not something like, a very small segment, but you could scale it up, scale it down, price point wise, like it all works. So.
Yeah, and I think what's interesting about sort of the tech side, data side of what you're doing is it becomes a model that's replicable, right? And so you've got something that you can teach, something you can take out, to larger than beyond just the 4 days product. If that's such
Yeah.
a thing that you're interested in, I mean, I think it's there's great learning for the industry in this.
Yeah, I mean, it's why we exist. We say our mission is to transform commerce into a circular economy. No big deal. So, it's really not just about making great product. We do that anyway, but we have to do that. That's table stakes. It is about this kind of transformative capacity for what we've built and the model that we've built.
Yeah, cool. So I was having a conversation with someone this year about when the pandemic hit, when it was, and it was kind of clear that everything we've been leaning into and building, whether it's distance learning, distance working, technology tools, digital platforms for education, circular economy, sustainability, like everything we've been building now all seems more ready to scale. Right. And it was almost like, whoa, the silver lining of the pandemic was a couple of things. One, reconnection to values, which I want to talk about with you too. But secondly was, maybe it's now time to scale some of the solutions that are greater efficiencies that we were ready to scale for. How have you seen that play out for you in this business, in your life, et cetera?
Yeah, I mean, I think having been on this journey as you have for longer than most, I think to see the momentum build immediately post pandemic, it feels palpable. Like you're just like, everybody actually is talking about this. Like to hear even big, huge corporate CEOs say circular economy, or I think even Anna Wintour mentioned it recently in a podcast, and you're like, wait, what? So it's happening. I think it's driven by customer demand, and that's the most exciting part to me, which is I think like the general population has evaluated values. They feel empowered to kind of speak to them and vote with them. And that will move mountains if the dollar shifts its priority, meaning the customer dollar. So for me, that's just incredibly exciting. And I think opens up the door for us really as the leader in this to have a more meaningful conversation with the industry and with our customers. We've been kind of like educating along the way, and now we have a lot more horsepower working in the same direction. So we've been able to grow the business. People are participating in the program. When you build something like this, you're like, well, people do it. I don't know, like it's kind of a guess on consumer behavior, and behavior is hard to kind of predict, and they're doing it. They're participating. Like we have a incredible take back program that is literally our number one selling SKU on a daily basis. And so it's just really exciting to see the potential here, the potential to scale this with variety, to scale this through partnership. I'm just really optimistic about that. I think for us, you talked to values and people's priorities of values. And I think that's where this kind of business starts to align really squarely. But we've also built it through the sense of value. I think those two have to kind of coexist. It's like, I always say values and value. If the two can coexist and then drive better profitability, win, win, win.
Yeah. I think you're right. I think the two terms directly related often, because it really is about demonstrating that values in the apparel sector actually creates greater value, right? And so how do you see, I guess this is sort of a beta question, but do you believe that whether it's this pandemic or the tipping point of climate change or social justice, do you see that there's an increased interest in value in this personal values related to your apparel that's occurring in this industry?
Absolutely. I mean, without a doubt. I think a representative from Google was on a call with me and said that the search frequency of sustainable fashion doubled in like June. So it's definitely, it's on the top of mind, on the tongue, on the headlines. And so I think absolutely, without a doubt.
The whole upcycling trending on TikTok alone is like demonstrating that people are actually re-engaging with this concept of upcycling product materials, fabrics. It's incredible.
Some of our top TikToks, we do these like DIYs and like how to refresh your t-shirt with a new pocket, or like we did these halves shirts that were really fun, and it's like gangbusters. And again, and like cleaning out your crap. Like I kind of think we've been sitting in our homes. We look around and we're like, oh, did I really need all this stuff? I don't know. There's got to be a different way. So it's magnified. for sure.
And we're wearing a lot more cotton t-shirts, probably. So,
Yeah,
sitting around
exactly.
home,
Yeah,
not wearing our suits as much,
yeah,
although
the product category
we
has
might miss that too. Yeah,
benefited.
good. Well, let me turn it a little bit to the personal and just ask, while we're on the topic of values, you have become a mother in the last few years, and Isla is this wonderful light in your life. How has that impacted? I mean, you were already in the sustainability journey, but how has being a mother, being a parent impacted this for you?
It's really actually been a personal impact. I think prior to Isla, it was very much about like go, 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 do, 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 do. And it was just get it done almost at any cost. And obviously not, because I've always been mindful. So it's not at any cost. But I think having a child, you start to kind of have to live in the present and really like feel and be in the moment. And that's actually shifted the way I work. It's you plan and you use your brain for all of those things, but you actually kind of have to live in, like, it's going to sound a little bit like your heart center
Mm-hmm.
is much more alive. And I think for me, and not in an academic way where I've become more mindful of materials, because I was already there. Like, I was always thinking about materials and environment and food. But just connecting that to kind of, instead of it just being an intellectual exercise, being like, it's a feeling exercise as well. It makes you feel healthy and well and doing good for the planet and doing good for the world and just being present and enjoying it all. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel the same way. I mean, for me has added a whole new. I have now almost 7-year-old and 3-year-old, and it adds a whole new layer, and it makes, I think, us interpret what our actions are and what we're doing to then how do you relate that to them, because they're watching everything we do, right? And so it's like, am I walking my own talk? Like, in terms of sustainability,
Yeah.
because a lot of us, I mean, I think, we believe in it, but then are we actually translating our actions oftentimes? So I think and with social justice and Black Lives Matter, there was so much more of like, am I walking my talk for my children to witness, or,
Yeah.
a lot
And
of
how
that.
you an environment really that does support your values and
Yeah.
at every kind of decision point. I think that is exactly right. Like, and some of that is your relationship to nature. Like, we've again been on this like fast path, very kind of city life. And I think we've all taken a step back and been like, wait, the beach, hiking, trees, like just again, every day, experiencing community, experiencing the things right around you,
Right.
being very
And
important.
a remembering of what it is that we are protecting too, and what's at stake is this beautiful slowing down. It's given so much of us an opportunity to get it back out into nature and recognize.
Yeah.
Recognize that. Yeah. So you clearly inspire me. You've been someone that every time I talk to you, I leave the conversation more energized and energetic than before.
Likewise.
Yeah, thank you. Well, then, so my question is, who inspires you, and what's inspiring you this year and right now? Like, who, what, podcasts, books, people?
I have such a hard time ever nailing down super specific people, books, and things, because I think it's a collection. I am so inspired by youth. I just find the energy of youth to be so powerful and like such a source. And I find such optimism in it. The voices, the creativity, the commitment, the thoughtfulness. That always kind of really moves me. And if it's in service to that and promoting and encouraging a better future for everyone who's so ready and eager and keen to create something better for us all, like, let's enable that. How do we enable that? Let's build that. So yeah.
I'm right there with you. I mean, it's for me, it's the same. And I recently had a conversation with a brand representative who had done tons of market research. This is a very huge footwear company who had done athletic and who had done tons of market research, and said this is one of the first times in history where, instead of a generation being sort of activated and then everyone influenced behind them, like the 60s, or we're seeing that a younger generation is actually influencing us, and mentorship is going both ways, which I 100% see. We're working on a docuseries, Generation F, about the future of fashion, and we're listening to youth. I'm knee deep in editing with the team this week, and it's like, wow. I mean, it's powerful because there's something different, which is the urgency of, we don't have a choice but to make this the future, right?
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, that is true. But I think that's also coupled with, there are always choices, and some people have chosen not to. And so it's it's really wonderful to see all of that moving in such a constructive, positive, energizing, dynamic. I just love it all. So.
I agree. All right. Well, we could go for another hour easily, and I love this. I'll just end with like, is there any is there anything that's like what's coming next for you? You want to share, or just a call to action that you think that in this moment, this time, that you want to put out there for folks listening?
Yeah. I mean, I think what's coming up next for us is really thinking about how we grow this system and how we do that through partnership, how we do that through our own brand extension, but how we do that in collaboration with the industry. Really how we enable our community also. Like we have just such a passionate group of people, giving them voices, really bringing them into the equation. As you can see, like we design for that community, and maintaining that kind of center of focus is really important for us. We're launching new technology. We're doing all sorts of things to kind of really scale this out and up. So I think that's motivating and exciting, and it's like our little engines are going. Call to action, I think people have really stood up. I actually just kind of want to hats off. We're always in this mode of what can we do next? Like people are making good choices and making progress, and I'm just very happy to see that. So it's a little, I don't think we stop and acknowledge often enough to say, great, keep going, keep doing it.
Yeah,
like,
progress.
Yeah,
I love it. I think that's the word for what we're doing, and what many of us are really energized and activated with right now in our country and in the world. So, well, Kristy Caylor, friend, entrepreneur, mentor, mother, visionary. There's so many ways to describe you. Thank you for joining me for a chat today, and
thank you.
Lots of love and blessings for all you're working on.
Oh, likewise. So happy to be here.
Me too. Bye.